I think a lot of people in this business are afraid to look at their numbers because it is cyclical, but just being aware of, okay, this is how much came in and how much went out last month. We need to be pretty conscious of making sure that we're not spending too much money on ghost expenses or whatever, to make sure that.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Big Picture Blueprint. Today, we're talking about a day in the life of a land investor, where you'll hear about some of the deals we are actively working on, what has gone wrong in them, what we're learning, and what the cadence actually looks like on a day-to-day basis for someone in land full-time. Before we get into that, Mason, how you doing?
Good, man. Things are super busy on our front. We're recording this January 16th of 2026. The new year has started off with a bang. Mortgage rates are down, which is always just one of those signs that whether it's reality or not, buyer sentiment is a little bit higher, which is getting us to close a lot more deals, and get a lot more under contract and everything like that. I feel like there's this lull in the holidays where there be like a random spike on a day or two. And then once the new year hits, everyone's kind of ready to try and operate as much as normal as possible. So excited to see what this year brings. Hopefully it'll be a good one. 2025 wasn't bad, but I think we're pretty cautiously optimistic about this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There seems to be just a lot more going on. We're under contract to sell one of the spec houses that's been sitting. We're suddenly getting tons and tons of showings, sold a few more of the Colorado lots. So the general sentiment I'm hearing everywhere is pretty much the same as to what you just said. But you want to kick it off? What does a day in the life of a land investor look like?
Yeah, and we'll kind of go back and forth between, what we're actively actually doing on with specifics as as well as kind of a generalization. So I broke it down on my list and my notes of, what do I do every single day? And whenever I get started with work, usually the first thing that I do is I check to make sure there are no new on-market deals that came in since yesterday that fit our buy box of what we're looking for. I think a lot of land investors are so focused on off-market that they forget to check for on-market, and you need to be the first person to jump on it. I try to have a lot of conversations with realtors of, hey, this is what we're looking for. Feel free to give me a call before it even hits market if it hits this criteria, and maybe, we can save you money on marketing costs and stuff like that to get the deal done. But step one of the day, every single day, check on market listings, see if there's anything within our buy box or within about 20 or 30%, so I can call and make an offer on it, and send a written offer. And then, and I can pause there because everything else that will require a little bit more. But Dan, what's something you do just like every single day in this business?
So I usually get up around 5-ish, 5 to 5:30, depending on the day. And my first meeting with my team is at 7 every morning. So I always have something, some sort of uninterrupted work planned for first thing in the morning. So on Fridays, it's all mail marketing related. So I do all my mailer work. This morning, had a meeting with my team. And then it varies a lot. Sometimes it's deal specific work. Sometimes it's big picture. But right now, today, it was very deal specific. We have a 185 acre property we got under contract yesterday in South Carolina. And so having to get the soil scientist scheduled, having to send the plat over to the planning and zoning to triple check that exactly what we're planning to do is going to be allowable. So it's a mix. And one of those punch list items for me today is probably making an offer on a lot that you're probably also making an offer on in Colorado. So a lot of big picture deal stuff I'm handling. I'm always myself, just like Mason, going after the larger tracts, while the team gets some of those, but more so smaller, medium-sized properties.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, for me, kind of the next thing that I try and focus on, it's what's going to make me money as soon as possible. Because, just like, what Dan and I kind of start our days with a lot of this stuff, this is going to make us money in the future of, taking down these projects that might take months or years to, fully sell out on, is fantastic. And you always need to prioritize that. But what's going to pay me in the next week or two. And typically that's buyers of, I've got various listings throughout the state on the broker side, deals I'm working with Dan. I get messages on just about every day, and just making sure I stay on top of it, because, there's certain things that I'll respond to after 6 or 7 p.m. At night. But in general, like, I try and close things down at the end of the day. I'm very focused on just spending time with my wife and being present in the evenings, just because right now I am so busy of working, get up, work out, and then, I'm working pretty much from, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day. And after that, I'm done. And there are people that, that's one of the challenges of real estate is I really don't like working on the weekends or on the evenings. And I'm sure that might lose me some business. And I'm sure some people might hear this and be like, well, that's not the kind of realtor that I want to work with. I will respond to stuff on the weekends and stuff like that. But following up with buyer leads, mostly on Facebook, to try and get some of these lots sold that I own or that I'm listing. That right there is something that can make an extra couple grand to, 5 figures a month, just doing stuff like that, which is always fun and exciting. So what about you?
Yeah.
Kind of what's next on your mind on a daily basis?
Yeah, on my end, I every day am helping the team with deals going through the pipeline. They might be stuck on things they might not know, whatever it might be. Sometimes I'm helping with finding good realtors just in my network for areas we don't know. So to your point about what is actually going to generate revenue for the business, I'm spending a lot of time on that as well. And so part of that, unfortunately, I have had a hell of a time trying to figure out how to outsource the Facebook posting. I've got a VA that at least does the postings for me with a chat GPT agent we built. It has a bunch of rules and everything. So it creates all the posts for every different group following their rules. But I still haven't found someone competent enough to properly respond. So I spend time every day responding to Facebook inquiries as well. And we've got a lot of buyers from there. So it's been worthwhile. So same as you in that front.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and kind of on the flip side of it, something I'm doing every single day, and it depends on who I'm talking to, whether it's, brokers with deals we're actively trying to buy, or sellers that have come directly into our pipeline from direct to seller marketing, which is, for us right now, just mail. We're getting calls every single day from, our last campaign, which was just 5,200 records that hit kind of at the beginning of the month. And we've gotten, I think, right around 120-ish responses from that, which I should have probably dripped that a little bit more versus have it go all out at once, because I was getting 30 or 40 calls a day for the first couple of days. And so, following up with seller leads is another important thing. It's this interesting balance where, with buyers, a lot of times you want to kind of create a sense of urgency of like, hey, there's only so much supply and there's a lot of demand. Like, if you are serious about purchasing this lot, let's get it going. Let's get this contract worked out. If there's no hesitation on your part and this is the product you want. But on the seller side of things, it's tricky, right? Because a lot of the people that we buy land from have owned the land for a long period of time, and they're not necessarily in a rush to sell it. And so if you are like, I'm going to follow up with this person every single day to get this deal done for, what is a large ranch or a larger investment decision on both sides, you're going to potentially, burn some bridges. But, with that being said, if you have enough leads in your pipeline on a daily basis, you need to be following up with your seller leads. And so, that's just kind of, good CRM hygiene of making sure that you have task lists associated with each deal that you're doing to make sure that you don't forget, because it's hard to keep all this straight of, we're talking about on a daily basis, and this is potentially dozens or hundreds of people that you're communicating with on a regular basis that you need to, keep organized. So I think that's kind of, the next step in the day. And part of the reason I phase my day in this order is because, just like Dan, like we're both people that kind of get up and get going pretty early, and you don't want to be calling sellers back at 7:00 in the morning, but you can send Facebook messages and, emails and stuff like that as early as you want and as early as possible. So, that right there. And then kind of the next part of it is just we always have transactions going on at any given time. like within, the personal business and everything, I've got one, two, three, four lots under contract to sell right now. I've got, a transaction that I'm brokering on the sell side that is selling, that, has regular stuff going on. Plus, everything else that we're under contract to buy. We're under contract to buy, close to 1,000 acres right now, across a few different properties. And so just making sure, each step is taken care of, even though there's not necessarily more tasks that occur, there's not daily tasks that occur when you're under contract to buy, a big piece of land. A lot of it's just hurry up and wait until, the dates are completed, but just making sure that you're not forgetting anything and kind of reviewing it just to keep that map, both in person and in your head, to make sure that, everything keeps moving along.
Yeah, that is a big part of my day as well. I'm not really handling much of the transaction coordination myself, other than the deals that I got, like the 185 acres I referenced yesterday, or some of the spec homes, one of those is selling, that sort of thing. But I spend a lot of time on coaching calls. So, my team at 7 a.m. and then usually throughout the day, some challenge comes up, something where they need help. After this podcast, I'm getting on and doing a call review with one of the acquisition people I have that's cold calling a lot. So that is not my favorite thing, but it's a big part of what makes the business go. So that definitely interrupts the day a lot, is just when the team needs help, because we just run into so many different scenarios and things, and you can't know everything. And of course, I've been doing it longer than any of my employees, so usually it's something that I can figure out that they can't. They're calling me about. So management and training is a big part of my day as well. And to your point earlier, Mason, I'm on the same page. I being on Pacific time, it is nice because most of my business is Eastern time, so I can call people at 6 a.m. because it's usually 9 a.m. at their time zone. However, and I usually take a break at 1 or 2 and I go surfing or go work out or something, and then I might clean up some more work after that. But I have a similar cadence where I don't work that late most days because I start so early. Today I started at like 5:15 or 5:30 because I got up pretty early. So that is a nice thing about this business, is if you're intentional, you can usually format your day pretty much how you would like. But I'll pause there.
No, and I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to get used to is, and I've kind of alluded to it on a few different shows, but one of my clients that hired me to be their buyer's agent ended up hiring me for a full-time job, which my title is technically vice president of acquisitions for the company, which, sounds fancy or whatever, but it's the same thing that I was doing in the current company, except doing it at a much, much larger scale and for, a large company with more buying power. And I'm trying to adapt my schedule of, shoot, I've got this pretty substantial business that I run myself, that I've since, let all my employees go. So it's just me there. And then, managing, what amounts to be a full-time job too. And I think just trying to, balance it where luckily, like it's the same type of work. So it's not like a big code switch or anything like that whenever I have to go from my personal business to, the job that I'm working right now. But it's, time management is a little bit different of like, Dan and I for years when he was living in Colorado would go to the gym at like 2 p.m. And right now it's like 2 p.m. I'm like full grind working. So it's kind of weird, on the scheduling side of things of like, I do feel like I'm working more of like kind of a corporate gig, but it's more fun and more exciting. I'm excited about the opportunities that we're able to do because I'm learning a tremendous amount of getting to see what, a 40, 50-year company who's been doing this for a long, long time, how they operate and how they've been successful through multiple market cycles and market crashes and stuff like that, which is just different. But I love the idea of, surfing at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. I usually go with some of the land guys I know out here, which is always fun. We can kind of mastermind a bit and help each other with deals. But one thing I have on here that I think is important is just batching. I've done a much better job the last year of batching, where I do, all or most of the mail for an entire month. I get that set up. And again, I have a VA actually pulling this stuff and doing the sorting and correcting the names and deduplicating, but then I double check it because it's so important that that's correct, right? I mean, if we mess up the mail, number one, it's just a huge waste of money. But number two, that's, the lifeblood of our business. And then I actually send it. I don't let them do anything where they're clicking the button to charge a credit card. So I send all the mail, double check what they've done. And so I try and really, really batch that. And then also the planning of that, both for mail and cold calling. Where are we going to go next? We have a master sheet tracking all that. So I try and do that, one or two times a month. And then Fridays is when I actually send it. I send mail every Friday. And as part of that, I'm constantly looking at our numbers. We set priorities every Monday. We look back on last week's numbers. And that is a big part of what we're doing on a daily basis. And I've gotten much better there with a full KPI dashboard that the team looks at and has clear metrics that they're trying to hit each week. So it's a mix. All of this is, or all of this, some of this is me being my own employee, and some of it is being a manager, and a few things are being an actual business owner. So it's wearing a lot of different hats, I think, for both of us every single day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My notes, I kind of move it into like what I'm doing on a weekly basis as well, which a lot of that is kind of managing the stakeholders in the various businesses that we're in, where I've got a lot of listings throughout the country that are with different realtors, of just trying to, on a weekly and sometimes every other weekly basis, depending on what the land, type of land is, of just checking in, saying, hey, any activity, anything going on, anything we need to do, as well as checking in with realtors that we've done business with in the past. And, they might have something coming up in their pipeline of, hey, yep, something's going on, because people will forget, like, until you have done enough business with them to really, really support them, they're going to forget about you. Everyone is thinking about themselves. We're all selfish. And if you are not communicating on a consistent basis, they're going to not send it to you. They're going to send it to the people that are communicating. And then, my favorite days, which typically are Wednesdays and sometimes on Fridays, is where I actually go out to properties that we're looking at, that we're either under contract to buy, we have projects that we're working on, or are, speculative. So, I mean, that'll be something that I'm doing probably on Monday, because it's a holiday, next week, as well as Wednesday, heading up north to Wyoming to go look at a few different projects that we've got going on out there, which is always more fun for me. I enjoy spending time on the road, and just listening to audiobooks or podcasts. And I love actually getting to drive around and walk around on the dirt that we're going to be transforming. And it's really fun, especially whenever it's a more interesting project. A lot of what we do is very, very flat land, even though we're in, the Mountain West. And so whenever it's getting to play on a more mountainous treed property, that's just a ton of fun. And then, just a weekly call to discuss current deals, because some of these deals will take, 3 to 6 months of due diligence that we're working on. And so it's just a weekly call kind of with, management of the team, discussing, hey, here's what's going on. And, here's what we've accomplished in the last week of, we've got 980 acres under contract this week. Let's, try and keep this trend up, every single week for the rest of the time, type of thing. But what about you, that you kind of zoom out and look at on a weekly basis?
I definitely do the same, where in the prime markets, I think you said daily, I'd probably do it 2 to 3 times a week. I look at all new listings over 100 acres, and then I look for any price drops. And if a property is nice, and what I mean there is, good location, dry, good road frontage, desirable area, unless it's just obscene, I always put it in the CRM and have a follow-up and watch for price drops. Like the property we got under contract yesterday. This is really important. People, this is why on market, I think, gets, people forget to even look, because they just assume it's not feasible. And this is a great example. They listed it at 1.5 million last fall, or maybe even in summer. They dropped the price, all the way to $1 million. Sat at $1 million for about 3 months. I put it in the CRM probably last October, and it was a great property, high and dry, a creek in the back, but not less. So there are a little bit of wetlands, but that's fine, because it's adds value to this type of property. Great road frontage, power, good area. And I've been watching it, just waiting to make an offer. And then I waited until right before Christmas, and we ended up making an offer at $750, We went back and forth, back and forth. We got them down to 830 on what was initially listed at 1.5 on the market. So that's a great example of you can get deals, right? If there was another one that had been in our pipeline, it was really nice, same sort of scenario, but it had been listed at the same price for like a year and a half. So we made a low offer on that and didn't even get a response. And so keep in mind, if they've got it at the same price for 2 years and there's no price drops, they're probably not motivated. But anyways, all that to say, that's become a big part of my day. As you're getting into these higher priced listings, there's an opportunity to buy at a discount on the market. Now, if you're looking at quarter acre infill lots, this will be a waste of your time. Don't do it. But for, multi-hundred or 1,000 acre properties, at half a million plus, you can get these sort of deals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's getting to know the brokers too, and starting to, good brokers will kind of tell you what's going on and like the type of offer that will get accepted of, what is it that's motivating them? Where it's so bizarre too, where, a lot of deals we're typically going to ask for anywhere from 60 to 180 days or more, depending on the size of it. But usually kind of 90 is our standard ask for due diligence. And specifically in the winter, where you could have some snowstorms that make it really complicated for surveyors to get out there and, do all the work that you need to do so you can actually see it. And I mean, we have deals where, in December, early December, comes on the market, say, hey, here's our offer, 90-day due diligence. We'll close right after due diligence is done. At this price, we come to an agreement on price, and they're like, no, we need 60 days due diligence. We won't tie it up for 90 days. So, okay, whatever. And then a month or two later, we have a conversation with them because the property's still sitting on the market, and it's, hey, we'll still do the deal, only 60 days due diligence. And it's so frustrating because, there's not a lot of logic there, in my mind, at least, where we'd almost be done with due diligence at this point in time, and nothing would have been any different for you. But I can understand the logic of you don't want to take anything off the market, and have it as pending accepting backup offers and stuff like that. But buyers and sellers don't necessarily have logic. So, it could be the thing where, just like you're saying, Dan, of, it's a very high listing. They won't settle for anything less than 1.2. And then one day randomly, they have a really bad day, they have a frustrating day, and they want to tie up some money, or they don't want their money tied up in that investment to sit anymore. And you make an offer at 750 and they accept it. And you'll never know unless you're communicating and kind of, understanding your numbers more so than anything of, here's our actual best and final offer. Like, that offer will stand, but if you come back to us in 6 months and things haven't changed, our offer is probably going to be a lot less, because that's what we pay for it. But
yeah, I want to emphasize, you keep mentioning knowing the brokers, and that really helped us on this deal. So, I run into people all the time that are timid about calling the local agents. And on this one specifically, we had a local agent. They're not quite local. He was about an hour away. I reached out to him. We've used him before. I thought he'd know the area. He says, I don't really know the area, but my managing broker actually owns a bunch of rental properties there and knows a lot of the locals. He might know the listing agent. So we get the broker on the phone. Oh, he's friends with the listing agent. Great. And so when that broker was involved in approaching the listing agent, they immediately took us seriously. They see a friend on the other side that they know personally. They volunteered way more information than they would have otherwise. And it put us in a much better position, as opposed to calling and saying, hey, I'm some out of towner you don't know. I want to make an offer. You don't get the same response, especially in the South, when you do that. And so you can make your network. And I feel like at this point in both the Carolinas, I can get a referral to some broker that's at local that'll do a much better job presenting an offer, presenting interest in a property than I can as an out-of-stater. And that is really powerful. I think people underestimate how much that matters, especially in these small towns, where if they see an out-of-state number or even out-of-town number within the same state, that does not serve you, and they put up a wall. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. No, I've gotten to experience that kind of moving into a new market, and I've been thoroughly manhandled by some of these people that do not want Coloradans moving into their market, which is really fascinating. But yeah, you have to think about motivations on all sides of the transaction, where us as buyers and developers, where we need to get our land at a certain basis. So after our development, we're able to make money. You've got the sellers that they have a number in mind, where whether it was an investment decision, it was a family property, or they got a number stuck in their head that, like, unless it's that number, they won't move. And then you've got the brokers involved that are motivated to just get a deal done, where I'm not saying they're not looking out for the best interest of their client, but there's deals out there where seller expectation is outrageous. And, maybe the property's worth $1 million. The seller said we have to list it at 2.4. And the listing agent takes the listing on, but they know that it's not going to move for anything more than, 1.1. And that's why you have to make the offer and have a really, really firm grasp. And I think it's something Dan and I've been talking about for years and years on the show now, of like, understand your product, like know what your offer means and be able to back it up. And some people care of like, how did you get to that number? This is listed at this. It's like, well, it's going to cost us, 15 or $20 in material and labor, per foot of road that we're building, and electric extension is going to cost this much. And so this is what our basis on the land needs to be for this project. And some people won't sell to you because you are a developer, and some people will say, oh, that's fair. I'm a capitalist. I want, everyone deserves to make money. That makes sense. So you at least have your logic and your decision making. But moving even a little bit further out, kind of on a monthly basis, tasks that I mean, this is where it starts getting a little bit more boring. Of here's something we're doing on a month, every single month, and that's reviewing your financial statements from the previous month, making sure that your accountant and bookkeeper are keeping up to date with all the transactions that are going on. Everyone says that bookkeeping and accounting is passive. I haven't found that yet. You still have to be involved and send them everything and justify every transaction you're doing, and kind of look at the metrics of how much money am I spending, how much money is coming in. And I think a lot of people in this business are afraid to look at their numbers because it is cyclical, and it is that sine wave of, cash flow from an entrepreneur that you get with this entrepreneurial roller coaster. But just being aware of, okay, this is how much came in and how much went out last month. We need to be pretty conscious of making sure that we're not spending too much money on ghost expenses or whatever, to make sure that in the coming months, whenever, the getting gets good, that's fantastic. And just making sure that, oh shoot, I didn't spend any money on marketing last month, which I don't think has ever happened, but like just making sure that you are spending money on the stuff you're supposed to do. But what about you, Dan? Kind of on a monthly basis, monthly cadence? What do you?
I have a number of things that I more do quarterly. I don't review my accounts every month. I do that, I think, every 2 or 3. I just did it just to make sure there's no recurring expenses that I'm not using. As far as spending money, that's all very set. I'm really pretty religious about sending the mail in the same quantities every week, so that I already know what that is, and that's the biggest expense, that and payroll. But expanding just to more long-term regular cadence things, every few months I look at the numbers for mailers, 6 months in arrears. And so what I mean by that is, I don't know the result of the mail I sent in December yet. There hasn't been enough time, right? It's January the 16th. The reality is there's quite a lag between when we send it and when we actually know the result. We have some deals under contract. We'll probably get more from that mail. It just, there's quite a lag. So I look at, like, if I was doing this today on January the 16th, I would probably look at the 6-month period from last March through September, approximately. So like a quarter back, and then a 6-month period. So I do that about once a quarter for cold calling and mail. I audit all my accounts to make sure I'm not forgetting about expenses that I don't use anymore, or subscriptions or anything like that, and just make sure everything's copacetic. Those are the main things. Most of the important things I hit just on the weekly KPI sheets and on my weekly kind of rock. I can't think of the term, but I have a set weekly task list that I do religiously, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And then, in free time, work related, beyond networking with brokers and builders and developers and engineers and stuff like that, kind of on a regular basis, I think, the rest of my free work time, I like, I spend a good amount of time virtually driving for dollars too. Um, I've tried every data source, from the most expensive to the least expensive at this point, and stuff gets missed super regularly. And whenever I'm looking at, a property that we've got, I'll look at all of the neighbors close by and send, handwritten mailers with offer letters and stuff like that, being able to say, we're your neighbor to the north or the south. We're interested in, picking up some more land close by. That's something that we really focus on. And other than that, it's fun. Going to the gym, hanging out with my wife, traveling, going out to nice restaurants, playing golf, collecting whiskey, just kind of fun, normal stuff. I don't mind working these 60-hour weeks anymore because I'm having a ton of fun doing it. And there's a lot of money, which is also motivating, but it's just fun. And that's kind of what our lives are looking like right now. But Dan, anything else you want to kind of add into the mix?
Yeah, a couple of things. I exercise every day, which for me is incredibly important. I mean, usually a lot of times twice a day I do something, and that's essential to being able to work effectively or sleep effectively or anything. And I wanted to take a moment and talk about some of the pitfalls that I think people run into, just probably because both of us have done it, in their day-to-day work. And I think a lot of it comes down to spending time on things that feel good or are easy, and you can rationalize them as being productive, but aren't actually getting where you want to go or aren't actually creating income. If you find market research fun, right? I've known people like this. Some people really enjoy that, looking at the data, looking at the numbers, and they spend far more time on that than they need. They have data for the next quarter. They know where they're marketing. They know what to do. And they're spending more time on market research when really they don't need to be right then. Maybe they need to be following up with leads or hiring someone or coaching their employees, whatever that might be. And so I just try and be really, really intentional about what I'm spending my time on and making sure it directly leads to revenue from coaching the team. That's one I hate doing, to be frank, that I need to be better about, and I have been better about. Deals, sourcing deals myself, I'm very on top of that. And avoiding, like, easy example, my personal website's outdated. I need to get that updated. And I looked at my calendar this week and what I'm doing, and I just keep pushing it back because it's not that important. That's way more fun than a lot of this other work, or writing an article for it. I need a new article for the front page. I enjoy that type of thing, but it's just not revenue producing. That's got to be an afterthought on a week or day when I'm not busy. When we just got that deal under contract yesterday. That's another big one I'm making an offer on. One of my main guys has a ton of deals in process he needs help with. I need to be spending my time on that, not, something that's kind of fun for me, like writing an article for my website,
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that I agree. There's so much stuff that, I mean, literally from, moving my office back to my house, I'm like looking at all the disorganization off camera that I haven't focused on just because a better environment to work probably makes me more money, but you need that fun focused time where it's like working out or going and surfing or going skiing or playing golf or whatever it is, and spending time with your friends and family to actually recharges versus all this other stuff. And a lot of this stuff is stuff we could hire out to do. But if you're not doing something, you have to look in the mirror of, am I not doing it because it's not important? Or am I not doing it because I'm scared or there's something, blocking me from actually doing it? And I think that's something we all kind of have to consider. And I think as a corollary to kind of what Dan was saying, so many people think networking is really beneficial. So many people think that having conversations with other, investors or wholesalers or whatever it is really beneficial. And, I had a wholesaler kind of reach out to me about a land deal that, she found me online, and I told her that's not what we're looking for, but here is what we're looking for. And she said, oh, fill out my buy box form. And I looked at it, and it was all designed for, houses and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not going to fill this out. She called me and left me texts and voicemail of like, you didn't fill out the buy box. And I kind of responded with, and the reason I'm telling her, I'll get into that in a second, but I responded of like, look, I don't really have time to go fill this out. Tell me about the layout. last large transaction you were a part of. And she ghosted me. And I think that while it's useful to network with people that are in your industry or doing the same thing that you're doing, that you can kind of get that iron sharpens iron, good ideas from, in general, like it's not always beneficial though to network with people that aren't actually doing anything. They're just like, they're the ones that go to all the meetups, they go to all these conferences, they go to all these, random things that get really hyped, and they don't ever actually do anything. They just spend a tremendous amount of money on coaching. And those are people that are time suckers that you need to stay away from, because they'll trap you in a conversation for 45 minutes to 2 hours and there's no takeaways or no action getting made. I actually find more benefit sometimes, outside of work specific networking, networking with people that are in different industries, that are high earners, that are doing kind of interesting stuff, just as it's more fun to be able to have conversations with people that empathize, but like, it's not just turns into, what type of land deals are you doing? You get to talk about different employee challenges, entity structuring, that kind of stuff. So I'll shut up though. Just make sure you're, we're talking about a day in the life, week, month in the life, and everything like that. And you just, time is the only finite resource you have, so protect it at all costs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good place to leave it. I don't have a whole lot more to say other than the reality is you're doing a lot of different stuff on a day-to-day basis, and keeping yourself organized and staying ahead of your day is really essential. That is it, guys. Give us feedback. Do you like these episodes where it's just me and Mason talking about what we're actually doing? Do you like the interviews more? Let us know either way on social media or in the comments. So until next time, Dan and Mason with the Big Picture Blueprint signing off.